Ladies and gentlemen, education begins with understanding how cause and effect truly operate in life. Most people are taught that circumstances create thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. However, a deeper observation reveals the opposite. Thoughts and beliefs shape circumstances. When this principle is understood, life is no longer random. It becomes responsive. Reality responds to inner assumptions because the human mind is not a passive observer of life. It is an active participant in shaping experience. Every individual continuously interprets the world through beliefs formed by past experiences, repeated thoughts, emotional conditioning, and learned expectations. These beliefs operate quietly in the background, influencing perception, decision-making, behavior, and emotional reactions. Over time, these internal patterns create consistent external results, giving the impression that life is happening independently, when in fact it is responding to a set of internal instructions. An assumption is not merely a thought that passes through the mind. It is a conclusion the mind has accepted as true. Once accepted, it becomes a reference point. For example, if a person assumes that opportunities are rare, they unconsciously overlook possibilities, hesitate to act, or dismiss favorable conditions as unrealistic. On the other hand, someone who assumes that opportunities are abundant, notices openings, responds confidently, and engages situations with expectation. The difference in outcomes is not due to luck, but to the internal framework guiding perception and response. From an educational perspective, this principle can be understood through cognitive psychology. The brain uses mental models to predict outcomes and reduce uncertainty. These models influence attention. What the mind expects, it is more likely to notice. This is why two people can experience the same environment, but report completely different realities. One notices obstacles, the other notices solutions. The environment did not change, the assumption did. Inner assumptions also shape emotional states. When a belief is held consistently, emotions align with it automatically. A person who assumes failure feels tension, hesitation, and doubt, which affects posture, tone of voice, and timing of actions. These subtle signals influence how others respond. Conversely, someone who assumes success carries calm confidence, which invites cooperation and trust. Social feedback then reinforces the original assumption, creating a feedback loop between belief and experience. Education teaches that repetition strengthens learning. The same applies to assumptions. Repeated thoughts harden into beliefs, and beliefs stabilize perception. This is why long-held assumptions feel like reality, rather than opinions. They become so familiar that they are no longer questioned. However, familiarity does not equal truth. Many limiting assumptions persist simply because they have never been examined. Change begins when awareness is introduced. By observing recurring patterns in life, one can trace them back to internal expectations. If similar challenges appear repeatedly, whether in relationships, finances, or personal progress, it indicates a stable internal assumption requesting expression. The purpose of this realization is not self-blame, but self-education. Understanding the cause allows for intentional adjustment. Inner assumptions do not operate instantly. They function through alignment over time. This explains why temporary positive thinking often fails. A thought that contradicts a deep assumption creates mental conflict rather than change. For example, affirming success while internally assuming unworthiness produces tension. The mind resolves this conflict by returning to the stronger belief. True transformation requires gradual acceptance of a new assumption, not forceful repetition. Educational disciplines emphasize consistency over intensity. Learning does not occur through occasional effort, but through sustained exposure. In the same way, assumptions shift when a new idea is repeatedly entertained, emotionally accepted, and mentally rehearsed. As the new assumption stabilizes, behavior adjusts naturally. Actions become less forced because they are now consistent with internal belief. Reality then responds through a series of confirmations. These confirmations are often subtle: improved communication, reduced resistance, unexpected assistance, or improved timing. Each confirmation strengthens the new assumption, making it feel more natural. Eventually, what once required conscious effort becomes automatic, just as any learned skill does. It is important to understand that reality does not judge assumptions as good or bad. It simply reflects them. This neutrality explains why both constructive and destructive beliefs can appear equally convincing. The system responds to consistency, not intention. This insight places responsibility back into awareness rather than circumstance. Another educational parallel exists in neuroscience. Neural pathways strengthen with repeated use. Assumptions are supported by these pathways. When a belief is frequently activated, it becomes the brain's preferred route. Changing assumptions requires creating alternative pathways through repeated mental engagement. This process explains why change can feel uncomfortable at first. The brain resists unfamiliar patterns until they become efficient. Inner assumptions also influence patience. When something is assumed to be inevitable, urgency disappears. The mind relaxes because it expects completion. This relaxed state improves judgment, creativity, and emotional regulation. In contrast, when the outcome is doubted, impatience and anxiety interfere with effective action. Thus, assumption indirectly controls timing by affecting decision quality. Educational growth emphasizes self-correction. Recognizing an unproductive assumption is equivalent to identifying an error in a learning process. Correction does not involve punishment but adjustment. Replacing an assumption is not about denying current reality, but about choosing a more functional interpretation moving forward. Reality responds to inner assumptions because assumptions determine how individuals interact with the world moment by moment. They shape what is noticed, how situations are interpreted, and which actions feel natural or difficult. Over time, these micro-decisions accumulate into life patterns that appear external but originate internally when this principle is understood. Empowerment replaces helplessness. Life becomes something to participate in consciously rather than endure passively. The question shifts from why is this happening to me to what belief is being expressed here. This shift marks the beginning of deliberate growth. Understanding that reality responds to inner assumptions is not a philosophical idea but a practical framework. It explains consistency in outcomes, the persistence of patterns, and the possibility of intentional change. When assumptions change, perception changes. When perception changes, behavior changes. When behavior changes, results change. In this way, inner assumptions quietly guide the entire structure of experience. Evidence appears after inner alignment because the external world functions as a mirror rather than a generator of belief. Most people are conditioned to accept only what they can see, measure, or touch as real, and then form beliefs based on that evidence. However, this approach places belief at the end of the process instead of the beginning. Inner alignment reverses this order. When thought, emotion, expectation, and self-concept move into agreement, external confirmation follows as a natural consequence. Inner alignment begins when a person internally agrees with an outcome. Agreement does not mean constant excitement or forced positivity. It means the absence of contradiction. When the mind stops arguing against an idea, resistance dissolves. At that point, the nervous system relaxes, attention becomes focused, and behavior subtly adjusts. These internal changes create conditions in which new outcomes can emerge. From an educational standpoint, this process resembles hypothesis testing. A belief functions like a hypothesis held internally. Once accepted, the individual unconsciously gathers data that either supports or challenges it. However, when alignment is strong, attentio naturally selects confirming data. This does not imply deception. It reflects how perception operates. The brain filters vast amounts of information and highlights what aligns with expectation. Therefore, evidence does not randomly appear. It becomes noticeable once alignment is established. Emotional coherence plays a crucial role in this process. Thoughts alone do not create alignment if emotions disagree. For example, repeating an idea of success while emotionally expecting disappointment creates mixed signals. The body remains in a state of vigilance, which influences tone of voice, timing, and decision-making. True alignment occurs when emotional response matches mental acceptance. This coherence stabilizes behavior and invites consistent external responses. Education shows that learning solidifies when understanding replaces memorization. Similarly, belief solidifies when internal acceptance replaces mental repetition. When a concept is understood deeply, it no longer requires effort to maintain. It becomes self-evident. In the same way, aligned belief feels natural rather than forced. The individual no longer watches for proof anxiously. They expect it calmly. Once alignment is present, external movement begins quietly. The earliest evidence is often internal, increased clarity, reduced anxiety, improved patience, or a sense of inevitability. These internal shifts precede visible change because they directly influence behavior. Decisions become less reactive and more deliberate. Communication becomes clearer. These changes alter how situations unfold. External proof often arrives incrementally. Instead of dramatic transformation, it appears as a sequence of adjustments. A delay resolves, a conversation opens, resistance lessens, or timing improves. Each instance may seem insignificant in isolation, but together they form a pattern. Education trains the mind to recognize patterns rather than isolated events. Recognizing these early confirmations is essential because they reinforce alignment. Doubt interrupts this process by reintroducing contradiction. When proof is demanded prematurely, the mind signals uncertainty. This uncertainty reactivates vigilance and narrows perception. As a result, evidence that does appear may be dismissed or overlooked. This creates the false impression that alignment is ineffective, when in reality it was simply interrupted. Another educational parallel can be found in skill acquisition. Before mastery becomes visible, coordination improves internally. A learner feels movements becoming smoother before others notice improvement. External performance follows internal integration. In the same way, life outcomes reflect internal organization only after it stabilizes. Time also plays a role in evidence formation. Alignment compresses perceived time by reducing resistance. When internal struggle ends, action flows more efficiently. This efficiency accelerates outcomes without force. Conversely, impatience slows progress by introducing emotional conflict. Understanding this relationship encourages patience without passivity. Social environments respond strongly to alignment. People unconsciously react to confidence, clarity, and emotional stability. When an individual is aligned, interactions become smoother. Others offer assistance more readily, misunderstandings decrease, and cooperation increases. These social confirmations are powerful forms of evidence because they reinforce belief through lived experience. Education emphasizes feedback loops. Evidence functions as feedback, not permission. It informs the individual that alignment is effective. When feedback is interpreted correctly, it strengthens confidence rather than creating dependency. The mistake many people make is allowing evidence to determine belief, instead of allowing belief to interpret evidence. Inner alignment also affects interpretation of setbacks. When aligned, obstacles are seen as adjustments rather than failures. This interpretation preserves emotional stability and prevents regression into doubt. Over time, this resilience maintains momentum even during temporary delays. Neuroscience supports this process through the concept of expectation-based processing. The brain predicts outcomes and adjusts behavior accordingly. When expectations are coherent, predictions improve. Improved predictions lead to better decisions, which generate better results. Evidence then confirms the accuracy of the internal model. Evidence appears after inner alignment because alignment organizes perception, emotion, and behavior into a coherent system. This system interacts with the world consistently, producing consistent feedback. The world does not change arbitrarily. It responds to the way individuals engage with it. Understanding this sequence transforms the role of proof. Proof is no longer something to wait for, but something to recognize. It becomes a signal that internal work is complete, not a requirement to begin believing. When this is understood, individuals stop chasing evidence and start cultivating alignment. Inner alignment shifts belief from hope to expectation. Expectation changes behavior. Behavior changes interaction. Interaction changes outcome. Evidence then appears as the final stage of a process that began internally. This is why those who understand alignment move with quiet certainty. They are not waiting for permission from circumstances. They are allowing circumstances to confirm what has already been accepted within. Small signs are confirmation, not coincidence, because meaningful change rarely announces itself in dramatic ways at the beginning. Most processes of growth, learning, ND transformation unfold gradually, revealing early indicators long before final outcomes become visible. These indicators are often subtle enough to be dismissed, yet consistent enough to carry information. Understanding this distinction is essential for developing awareness, confidence, and continuity in any process of intentional change. Progress is measured through incremental improvement. A student does not suddenly master a subject overnight. Understanding deepens step by step. Early signs such as improved comprehension, fewer mistakes, or faster recall indicate that learning is occurring, even though mastery has not yet been achieved. Similarly, in life, early signs signal internal alignment translating into external movement. These signs are not the final result, but they confirm that direction and momentum are correct. Small signs appear because large outcomes require multiple components to align. Timing, behavior, opportunity, and external conditions must coordinate. Before this coordination is complete, partial movement occurs. This movement may take the form of repeated ideas, unexpected conversations, minor improvements, or obstacles resolving more easily than before. Each instance suggests that underlying structures are adjusting. Coincidence implies randomness without pattern. Confirmation, however, is recognized through repetition and relevance. When the same type of event occurs more than once, or when different events point toward the same direction, a pattern forms. Education trains the mind to identify patterns rather than isolated data points. The ability to recognize confirmation depends on observation rather than expectation of dramatic change. Many people fail to benefit from small signs because they underestimate their value. Conditioned to expect immediate results, they dismiss early indicators as insignificant. This dismissal interrupts confidence and weakens alignment. Confidence grows through acknowledgement. When small confirmations are noticed and accepted, belief stabilizes. Stabilized belief allows the process to continue without emotional interference. Psychologically, the brain uses feedback to determine whether a strategy is effective. Small signs function as feedback. When feedback is interpreted positively, motivation increases. When it is ignored or invalidated, motivation decreases. Therefore, recognizing small confirmations is not merely encouraging, it is functional. It keeps the system engaged. Small signs often arrive in familiar forms. A chance meeting, a delayed response that turns favorable, a spontaneous idea, or a subtle shift in mood may all indicate progress. These are not dramatic events, but they influence decisions and behavior. Over time, these micro-adjustments accumulate, leading to noticeable change. Another educational parallel exists in physical training. Muscle development begins internally through neural adaptation before visible growth appears. Early signs include improved coordination and endurance. Those who understand this remain consistent. Those who demand immediate visible results quit prematurely. The same principle applies to personal development and life outcomes. Small confirmations also test patience. They require trust in process rather than fixation on outcome. Patience is not passive waiting, it is active recognition of movement. When individuals learn to value incremental progress, they develop resilience. This resilience prevents regression into doubt when final results are delayed. Ignoring small signs can create internal contradiction. When evidence is present but rejected, the mind experiences dissonance. This dissonance may manifest as frustration or confusion. Acknowledging small confirmations resolves this tension and maintains coherence between belief and experience. Social interactions often provide early confirmation. Subtle changes in how people respond, greater openness, quicker cooperation, or unexpected support indicate shifts in perception. These responses reflect internal alignment projected outward. They are valuable indicators because they involve independent feedback from others. Small signs also refine direction. Not all confirmations indicate immediate success. Some reveal necessary adjustments. An unexpected delay may prevent an unfavorable outcome. A redirection may open a better path. Recognizing confirmation does not mean interpreting everything as perfect. It means understanding that movement is occurring and information is being provided. Education emphasizes reflective observation. Reflection allows meaning to emerge from experience. By reflecting on small signs, individuals extract lessons that guide next steps. This reflective process transforms experience into learning rather than noise. Over time, the accumulation of small confirmations produces momentum. Momentum reduces effort because progress begins to carry itself. Actions feel more natural, Timing improves and resistance decreases. At this stage, what once required conscious discipline becomes automatic. Small signs also shift identity. When a person repeatedly notices confirmation, they begin to see themselves differently. They move from seeing themselves as struggling to seeing themselves as progressing. This identity shift further influences behavior, reinforcing the cycle from a neurological perspective. Recognizing confirmation activates reward pathways. This reinforces attention toward constructive patterns and away from discouraging ones. The brain learns what to prioritize based on perceived reward. Thus, acknowledging small signs trains perception itself. Confirmation does not require interpretation through superstition. It is grounded in observation. When internal assumptions change, behavior changes. When behavior changes, environment responds. Small signs are the earliest visible evidence of this chain reaction. Dismissing small confirmations as coincidence keeps individuals locked in a cycle of doubt. Accepting them as information fosters continuity. The difference lies not in events themselves, but in interpretation. Interpretation determines whether progress is supported or sabotaged. Small signs are confirmation because they demonstrate coherence between internal state and external response. They reveal that alignment is active, learning is occurring, and direction is correct. When individuals learn to notice and value these indicators, they develop confidence without arrogance and patience without passivity. Transformation rarely arrives suddenly. It arrives prepared. Small signs are the preparation. Those who understand this do not wait for dramatic proof. They recognize progress as it unfolds. In doing so, they allow the process to complete itself naturally, guided by awareness rather than urgency. Persistence in awareness shapes outcomes, because consistency of attention determines which ideas are reinforced and which fade away. Awareness is not merely noticing what is happening, it is the direction in which the mind repeatedly returns. Over time, this direction becomes a habit, and habits shape both perception and behavior. When awareness persistently rests on a chosen assumption, that assumption gains psychological strength and begins to organize experience around itself. Learning is not achieved through a single exposure, but through repeated engagement. Concepts become clear when the learner revisits them, reflects on them, and applies them in different contexts. The same principle governs awareness. A single moment of clarity is helpful, but it is repetition that stabilizes. As understanding. Persistent awareness allows an idea to move from intellectual recognition to lived certainty. Many people misunderstand persistence and confuse it with effort or strain. True persistence does not involve forcing thoughts or suppressing doubt aggressively. It involves gently returning attention to a chosen perspective whenever the mind wanders. This return is calm, not tense. Tension indicates resistance, while persistence operates through familiarity. Awareness influences outcomes by shaping interpretation. Two individuals can face the same situation and derive completely different meanings from it. The one whose awareness is trained toward expectation and learning will see feedback and opportunity. The one whose awareness is fixed on fear or limitation will seek confirmation of difficulty. Over time, these interpretations solidify into patterns that appear external but originate internally. Education emphasizes the role of focus and skill development. A student who consistently pays attention to feedback improves faster than one who studies sporadically. Similarly, awareness that persistently notices alignment, progress, and correction accelerates development. Awareness that drifts between hope and doubt creates inconsistency. Persistence also stabilizes emotional response. When awareness is anchored, emotions fluctuate less dramatically. This stability improves decision-making and communication. Others respond more positively to calm consistency than to emotional volatility. These social responses then reinforce outcomes aligned with the persistent state. Another educational parallel can be found in mindfulness training. Practitioners are taught to return attention to the present moment repeatedly. Each return strengthens attentional control. In the same way, returning awareness to a chosen assumption strengthens belief. Over time, the assumption becomes the default mental state rather than an effortful focus. Persistence in awareness does not ignore reality, it contextualizes it. Challenges are acknowledged without being magnified. Successes are recognized without being exaggerated. This balanced observation maintains coherence. When awareness is stable, external events lose the power to dictate internal state. Neuroscience explains this through neuroplasticity. The brain rewires itself according to repeated focus. Persistent awareness strengthens neural networks associated with chosen perspectives. This rewiring makes certain responses more automatic. As reactions become automatic, behavior becomes consistent, and consistency produces predictable results. Awareness also influences timing. When persistence eliminates inner conflict, action becomes efficient. Decisions are made with clarity rather than hesitation. Opportunities are recognized promptly. This efficiency creates the impression that outcomes are arriving faster, when in fact resistance has been reduced. Progress is often nonlinear. Periods of apparent stagnation precede breakthroughs. Persistence allows individuals to continue without discouragement during these plateaus. Awareness maintained through uncertainty preserves momentum until visible change emerges. Persistent awareness also reduces overreaction. When the mind is trained to return to a steady perspective, temporary setbacks do not derail progress. This resilience prevents abandonment of direction. Over time, this steadiness becomes a defining trait. Social and environmental feedback respond strongly to persistence. Others trust consistency. When words, actions, and emotional tone align repeatedly, credibility forms. This credibility opens doors and attracts cooperation. These responses are not accidental, they are reactions to sustained coherence. Education teaches that assessment should form adjustment, not abandonment. Persistent awareness allows for correction without collapse. When feedback indicates change is needed, awareness adapts while maintaining direction. This flexibility within persistence is key to long-term success. Another effect of persistence is identity shift. What the mind repeatedly attends to becomes part of self-concept. A person who persistently views themselves as capable begins to act accordingly. This identity influences every interaction and decision, reinforcing outcomes aligned with it. Persistent awareness also quiets the need for constant reassurance. When the mind is anchored, it no longer seeks validation from every result. This independence increases confidence and reduces emotional dependency on circumstances. Persistence is not rigidity. It allows for learning and evolution. The focus remains on the desired direction, not on a fixed method. This adaptability keeps progress aligned with reality rather than fantasy. Persistence simplifies effort. What once required conscious redirection becomes automatic orientation. Awareness settles naturally into constructive patterns. At this stage, outcomes feel less forced and more inevitable. Persistence in awareness shapes outcomes because it governs what is reinforced, what is ignored, and how experience is interpreted. It determines which beliefs gain strength and which dissolve. When awareness is consistent, life responds with consistency. Understanding this principle shifts responsibility from controlling events to managing attention. Events become information rather than threats. Attention becomes the primary tool of influence. Those who master persistence in awareness do not rush or retreat. They remain steady. This steadiness creates reliability within themselves and trust from others. In this way, outcomes are shaped not through pressure, but through presence. Persist. ENT awareness is the quiet force behind lasting change. It does not demand immediate results. It allows processes to mature. And when results appear, they do so as natural extensions of sustained internal alignment rather than sudden miracles. Emotional acceptance precedes manifest results because the mind ultimately responds more to feeling than to verbal instruction. Thoughts may introduce an idea, but emotions determine whether that idea is accepted as real. Until something feels internally true, the mind treats it as hypothetical. When emotional acceptance occurs, resistance dissolves, and the idea becomes part of the individual's internal reality. From that point onward, behavior, perception, and expectation reorganize naturally. Understanding is distinguished from memorization by emotional clarity. A student may repeat information accurately, yet remain uncertain until comprehension occurs. That moment of comprehension is often accompanied by a feeling of ease or certainty. The same principle applies to belief. When an idea is emotionally accepted, it no longer feels forced or debated. It feels settled. This sense of settlement is critical because the mind stops monitoring for contradiction. Emotional acceptance is not excitement or constant positivity. It is neutrality combined with certainty. When the mind accepts something as true, emotional urgency fades. There is no need to convince oneself repeatedly. This calm confidence is a sign that the idea has been integrated. Integration allows the nervous system to relax, which directly affects decision-making, communication, and timing. Many people attempt to manifest outcomes through mental repetition while emotionally remaining uncertain. This creates internal conflict. The mind receives mixed signals. One part asserts a desired outcome, while another anticipates disappointment. The emotional system often overrides verbal intention because it evolved to prioritize survival and predictability. Therefore, unresolved emotional doubt slows or blocks progress. Emotional acceptance aligns expectation with behavior. When an outcome is emotionally accepted, actions related to it feel natural rather than effortful. Choices are made without excessive analysis. Opportunities are recognized without hesitation. This natural behavior produces smoother interactions with the environment, increasing the likelihood of favorable results. Education shows that motivation improves when learners feel capable. Feeling capable is emotional acceptance of competence. Once accepted, effort becomes more efficient. Similarly, accepting success emotionally produces confidence that guides behavior constructively. Emotional acceptance also influences interpretation. When the mind accepts a positive outcome, challenges are interpreted as temporary adjustments rather than threats. This interpretation prevents emotional regression. Setbacks no longer trigger panic or abandonment of direction. Instead, they are processed as part of the process. Another educational parallel exists in habit formation. A habit forms only after emotional resistance fades. Initially, effort is required. Over time, acceptance develops, and the behavior becomes automatic. Manifest outcomes follow the same trajectory. Emotional acceptance marks the transition from effort to automation. The body plays a central role in emotional acceptance. Emotions are physiological responses. When acceptance occurs, the body reflects it through relaxed posture, steady breathing, and calm tone. These physical cues influence how others respond. Social feedback then reinforces the accepted belief, creating a reinforcing loop. Emotional acceptance also regulates patience. When something is accepted as inevitable, urgency disappears. This absence of urgency improves judgment. Decisions made without pressure are typically more accurate. Thus, emotional acceptance indirectly improves outcome quality by improving decision quality. Assessment. Anxiety interferes with performance. When anxiety decreases, performance improves. Emotional acceptance reduces anxiety by resolving uncertainty. The mind no longer treats the outcome as a threat. This relaxed state enhances creativity and adaptability. Another important aspect of emotional acceptance is identity alignment. When a belief is emotionally accepted, it integrates into self-concept. A person does not merely believe an outcome will occur, they see themselves as the kind of person for whom such outcomes are normal. This identity shift influences countless micro-decisions throughout the day. Emotional acceptance does not require denying current circumstances. It involves reframing them. Circumstances are seen as transitional rather than definitive. This perspective preserves emotional stability and prevents overreaction. Neuroscience supports this through emotional memory. Experiences accompanied by emotional acceptance are encoded more deeply. When a belief is emotionally accepted, the brain prioritizes it. Attention shifts toward information that supports it and away from information that contradicts it. Emotional acceptance also improves communication. When a person is internally settled, their communication becomes clearer and less defensive. Others respond more positively to clarity than to tension. These responses create external conditions aligned with the accepted belief. Emotional acceptance cannot be forced. It develops through familiarity and reflection. Repeated exposure to an idea allows emotional resistance to soften. Over time, the idea feels less foreign and more reasonable. This gradual process is more effective than intense effort. Education emphasizes EMOT, ional safety, as a prerequisite for learning. Similarly, emotional acceptance creates internal safety. When the mind feels safe, it explores possibilities without fear. This openness allows opportunities to be recognized and utilized. Emotional acceptance also determines consistency. When an idea is accepted emotionally, it remains stable even during fluctuation. Temporary setbacks do not erase it. This stability maintains alignment over time, increasing the probability of outcome realization. Those who understand emotional acceptance do not chase results anxiously. They focus on settling the idea internally. Once settled, they allow events to unfold. This patience is not passive, it is confident. Emotional acceptance precedes manifest results because acceptance resolves internal contradiction. Once contradiction ends, energy is no longer wasted on doubt. Behavior aligns naturally. Perception sharpens. Interaction improves. The external world responds to this coherence. Results then appear not as surprises, but as confirmations. They feel familiar because they were emotionally lived in advance. This familiarity is the hallmark of true acceptance. When something feels familiar before it arrives smoothly. Understanding this principle shifts effort from controlling outcomes to cultivating internal agreement. Emotional acceptance becomes the foundation upon which all external change rests. When acceptance is present, results follow as a continuation of what has already been established within. Conscious observation strengthens belief because attention validates experience. What the mind repeatedly notices gains importance, and what gains importance gradually feels real, reliable, and expected. Observation is not passive watching. It is an active process of meaning-making. When observation is conscious, it reinforces internal assumptions instead of undermining. This reinforcement stabilizes belief and allows it to mature into certainty. Learning improves when students actively observe their progress rather than waiting for final results. When learners notice improvement, such as increased clarity, quicker recall, or better problem solving, they gain confidence. This confidence encourages continued engagement. The same mechanism applies to belief formation. Observing progress, even in small forms, confirms that alignment is working. Conscious observation differs from anxious monitoring. Anxious monitoring looks for proof with tension and fear of failure. Conscious observation, by contrast, notices without pressure. It recognizes what is present rather than demanding what is absent. This distinction is critical because anxiety weakens belief, while calm observation strengthens it. Belief is reinforced through feedback loops. Observation provides feedback. When the mind notices evidence of alignment, such as smoother interactions, improved timing, or reduced resistance, it registers success. This registration triggers internal reward systems, making the belief feel more secure. Over time, belief shifts from possibility to expectation. Education teaches that feedback must be interpreted constructively. Poor interpretation of feedback discourages learning. Similarly, when observation focuses only on what is missing, belief erodes. Conscious observation trains attention toward what is working. This does not deny challenges, it contextualizes them within progress. Another educational parallel exists in scientific experimentation. Observations confirm hypotheses. However, meaningful conclusions are drawn from patterns, not single data points. Conscious observation looks for patterns rather than isolated events. When repeated confirmations appear, belief strengthens naturally. Observation also shapes memory. Experiences that are consciously noticed are encoded more deeply. When progress is acknowledged, it becomes part of personal narrative. This narrative influences self-concept. Over time, the individual begins to see themselves as someone for whom progress is normal. This identity reinforces belief further. Neuroscience supports this through attentional bias. The brain prioritizes information that aligns with what it considers important. Conscious observation teaches the brain what to prioritize. When alignment-related evidence is noticed consistently, the brain becomes more efficient at detecting it. This efficiency creates the impression that confirmation is increasing, when in fact perception has sharpened. Conscious observation also reduces doubt by replacing imagination with experience. Doubt thrives in uncertainty. Observation introduces data. Even small data points weaken doubt because they demonstrate movement. As observation accumulates, doubt loses influence. Reflection turns experience into knowledge. Conscious observation is a form of reflection. It allows individuals to extract meaning from events rather than reacting impulsively. This reflective process strengthens belief because belief becomes informed rather than blind. Observation influences emotion. When progress is noticed, emotional state stabilizes. This stability improves decision-making. Better decisions produce better outcomes, which provide further evidence. Thus, observation indirectly shapes results through emotional regulation. Another important aspect of conscious observation is patience. When progress is observed, patience increases because the process feels alive. The mind no longer feels stuck. This patience prevents premature abandonment of direction. Conscious observation also refines accuracy. It reveals what is aligned and what needs adjustment. This clarity prevents rigid thinking. Belief becomes flexible. Why? Stable. Flexibility allows adaptation without loss of confidence. In social context, observation strengthens belief through interaction. Noticing positive responses from others reinforces internal assumptions. These responses serve as external mirrors. When observed consciously, they build trust in the process. Education emphasizes metacognition, thinking about thinking. Conscious observation is metacognitive. It allows individuals to observe not only outcomes but also internal reactions. This awareness prevents emotional overreaction and preserves alignment. Observation also influences expectation. When progress is observed, expectation shifts from hope to anticipation. Anticipation is calm and grounded. This state improves timing and responsiveness. Importantly, conscious observation must be intentional. Unconscious observation defaults to problem-focused attention. Intentional observation redirects focus toward constructive evidence. This redirection strengthens belief deliberately rather than accidentally. Conscious observation also resolves impatience. When the mind recognizes ongoing movement, urgency fades. This reduction in urgency improves clarity. Clarity improves effectiveness. Over time, observation accumulates into trust. Trust reduces effort. Reduced effort allows processes to unfold naturally. This natural unfolding often produces better results than forced action. Confidence grows from seeing improvement. In life, belief grows from observing alignment. Observation is the bridge between internal assumption and external confirmation. Conscious observation strengthens belief because it validates experience without tension. It turns progress into proof. It transforms belief from theory into lived understanding. When individuals master conscious observation, they no longer search desperately for signs. They notice them calmly. This calm noticing stably says belief. Stabilized belief shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. Observation becomes an active force. It does not create outcomes directly, but it sustains the internal state that allows outcomes to emerge. Conscious observation completes the cycle of belief by anchoring it in experience. Understanding this principle shifts focus from control to awareness. Rather than forcing results, individuals observe alignment. Rather than doubting delay, they notice movement. This shift allows belief to mature naturally. When belief is strengthened through conscious observation, it becomes self-sustaining. It no longer depends on constant reassurance. It stands on accumulated evidence. At that point, outcomes arrive not as surprises, but as confirmations of what has already been observed unfolding. The conclusion of this entire discussion brings all ideas back to a single unifying understanding. Life is not random, and progress is never accidental. What appears on the outside is the natural extension of what has been organized within. When inner assumptions are clarified, emotionally accepted, and consistently maintained, reality responds in orderly and predictable ways. Everything begins with awareness. By understanding that beliefs shape perception, perception guides behavior, and behavior influences outcomes, responsibility shifts from circumstances to consciousness. This shift is not a burden, it is empowerment. It means that change does not require force, struggle, or constant correction of the external world. It requires alignment of thought, emotion, and attention. Evidence does not lead belief. Belief prepares the ground for evidence. Small signs are not to be ignored or dismissed because they are the earliest confirmations that alignment is active. Persistence in awareness keeps direction steady. Emotional acceptance removes resistance, and conscious observatio, N, transforms progress into confidence. Each principle supports the next. forming a complete and self-reinforcing process. When these elements work together, urgency fades and certainty replaces effort. Life begins to feel cooperative rather than confrontational. Outcomes unfold naturally because they are no longer resisted internally. What once felt distant starts to feel familiar, and what feels familiar eventually becomes visible. The ultimate lesson is simple but powerful. Everything is already moving toward coherence. By noticing the proof instead of demanding it, by trusting alignment instead of fearing delay, and by maintaining awareness instead of chasing control, individuals allow results to arrive in their proper time. In this understanding, preparation becomes more important than prediction, alignment more effective than force, and awareness more influential than circumstance. When the inner state is settled, the outer world has no choice but to follow.